I smell it, and I gotta say, let him cook, because Dwayne Johnson absolutely smashes it in the Smashing Machine. Hi, my name is Zach. I talk about movies every week with you, and today I'm going to dive into my thoughts in Benny Safdie's The Smashing Machine. Dwayne Johnson has been criticized over the past couple of years playing the same exact character with different jobs and maybe a different haircut, and kind of just transitioning his WWE persona over to Hollywood. And I think that really worked really well for a very long time. At one point, he was the highest grossing actor of all time. But once this meme hit the streets and people started realizing that he was kind of doing the same thing with a lack of range, the seams really started to crack. And then when the rumor came out that he can't lose fights in any of his movies that he has, and Black Adam showed that that was to be true, people started turning on him. But I gotta say, Dwayne Johnson did it. He did the opposite of what he always does in all his movies. He was able to lose himself in a role. When the movie first started, there was a point in me that was like, seeing like it kind of still looks like him, but as the movie went on, he completely lost himself as Mark Kerr, this gentle giant who's so sweet and nice outside the ring, but so vicious once the bell hits. What Dwayne Johnson here is kind of brilliant. He strips away that persona that we all know and love of him being the Rock and being charismatic, the most electrifying man, and kind of uses his real life personality, what you see in interviews or the small moments we capture with him with other like fans and other people that he worked with. That sweet, caring guy that has a smile that lights up the room. And in the movie and in other anecdotes for Mark Kerr, the real life person, they have described Mark Kerr like that. That's what I think, that Dwayne Johnson was born to play this role. He was the only person that I think could probably do this the way he does it, because he had a similar upbringing to Mark Kerr in terms of he was a collegiate athlete. He did trailblaze in the WWE and during the Attitude Era, during the era where WWE needed it the most. And Mark Kerr, the person, in the beginning of his career, where this movie captures, was a trailblazer for heavyweight MMA. He brought it to a global stage where it kind of set up what we have today for UFC. In the movie and in real life, Dwayne has to deal with the bright lights, the pressure of trying to be the best. And these are things that he's had to deal with his life in every avenue that he's tried to go after. And Mark Kerr here, in this movie, we go from like 1997 to the early 2000s, show that early rise is struggling with so many different things. The rule changes that are happening in the MMA space, his relationship to his wife, his relationship with his best friend, and him trying to make sure that he gets paid what he deserves. And I gotta say, Dwayne Johnson in his personal life, from what I know, dealt with all these things on his upcoming. You know, things changed as he entered the WWE. Things changed with his relationship to his first wife, and things were really rocky when it came to him, pun intended, to how he dealt with money and getting paid equivalent to some of the other people who were getting paid high in his own field. So he brought a lot of that there. It was very lived in. You can tell that he wasn't out of his own depth. And this is exactly what we wanted to see from Dwayne Johnson. Because for me, you know, I see the memes, I hear what people talk about, but I've seen a lot of his films. And outside the big blockbusters, Dwayne Johnson can act. He can go to a dramatic place. But I feel like with his bigger roles, he kind of does play the same thing. But when his smaller ones, like Pain and Gain, Faster, even the show Ballers, he does tap into some range. And here he gets back to that. He gets back to the basics and gets into a dramatic way. It gets to a vulnerable place that we want to see actors get to, and he actually loses. So I think he took this role because it was going to be all the opposite of everything, all the negative things people were talking about, and I think he nailed it. I think the film takes an unconventional way to tackle the biopic. A lot of biopics, which a lot of people have been getting annoyed with, has, you know, started from when they were really, really young or when they were born up until like the end of their career or to the end of their life. And a lot of times it feels like it goes through the same ebbs and flows, the struggle to make it through. When you make it through, you take drugs and then that dip and then you rise above. This movie kind of captures just a certain amount of years in his life when he first was starting out and getting big. So it was really laser focused on a certain part of Mark Kerr's life instead of trying to capture everything about him. Those triumphs, those breakthroughs, those struggles that he had with addiction, it really focused on all that. And Dwayne Johnson revels in those quiet moments when he needs to, and he shows out big when it comes out being in the ring. He didn't have a stunt double. Benny Safdie really wanted to capture the MMA fighting in the ring and make it as realistic and authentic as possible. And Dwayne decided to go in there and fight. And he's talked about how he even got a concussion by getting knocked out by a trained UFC fighter in one of the fights in the film. So the fighting feels very visceral and real and authentic because Dwayne was in there throwing bows. And one thing I really like and think that I really attached to in this film is the way they depict fighters. It's very unconventional in terms of how we usually see locker room talk, or how locker room or fighters are. Usually they're very aggressive, isolated, drinking and partying all the time, and kind of doing like the showmanship thing. Here, it was kind of stripped back and regular. We should see them focused. They're training. They're friendly. It's not a thing where I hate you because we're about to go bash each other's faces in. It's like, no, we keep that in the ring, and outside the ring we're very friendly. That's very different from what we usually get in most of these biopics or just movies about fighting in general. The realism of it all is very, very refreshing. I think that was the part of the movie that I really enjoyed the most, just seeing him interact with all the fighters. And I think that this movie, like a lot of Dwayne Johnson movies, revolves around him, but in a different way. Everything revolves around his chemistry with the actors, with Emily Blunt, who plays his wife, and Benny Safdie, the director and writer of this film. And the best part of it all, and the best dynamic, is his Mark Kerr's best friend, Mark Coleman, played by real UFC fighter Ryan Bader. We see them vulnerable, genuinely sweet to each other, and caring about each other in a way that most men are not depicted in real life or even in film. It usually is always kind of like, yeah, pat on the back. But they were here, they were hugging each other, they checked in on each other. I could relate to it. This is how I act with my friends. We're very caring and hugging and dapping up and having fun and really checking on each other. It's not that toxic masculinity that, you know, it's being promoted a lot of the times. It was really, really refreshing to see that this guy who's so vicious, he eye gouges people, bashes them in the face, knees them in the gut, trying to break their ribs when he's in the ring. But when it comes to being outside of that there is a vulnerability there with this other giant who's also doing the same things, and they care about each other. It's one of the most wholesome male relationships I've seen on screen in a very long time, and I really thought it was smashing news. There's a sticky wicked smashing. So while that dynamic was fantastic, another dynamic that was great but in a different way was where the toxicity in the film comes, and that's Mark Kerr's relationship with his wife Dawn. She's played by the very, very underrated Emily Blunt. Blunt kills it in his role as this gaslighting, emotionally manipulated narcissist. It's really interesting how the movie tackles her character, because at first, if I was on her side in terms of how Mark Kerr was acting towards her, but as the movie progressed, we saw that the dynamics was actually much different than what we thought in the beginning. There was multiple times where they were getting into these heated volcanic arguments where I threw my hands up in the air, couldn't believe what she said to him, or facepalm myself as she did something else to distract him from his main goal, even though he was doing everything he can to make sure she lived a certain way and spend time with her as well. Usually in these movies is the person solely focused on something and they completely ignore their spouse, but that's not what was happening here. He cared about her and he made sure to spend time with her, but it just wasn't enough. And honestly, if it wasn't for Sean Penn in one battle after another, I think Emily Blunt would be the villain of the year for me. And for you guys, do you think that Emily Blunt, based on this performance, I think she did a fantastic job, will get like a Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress? And do you think Dwayne Johnson deserves a nod for his role here and losing himself in this movie? I'm going to talk about right now his relationship with Benny Safdie and what Benny Safdie's doing here, which I think may be holding back the opportunity for these two great actors from getting any Oscar nominations at all. So Benny Safdie, this is his first time directing without his brother from the legendary Safdie brothers, who have made incredible films. He's writing, directing, and editing the film, and he achieves these things at different levels. I think on a directing standpoint, it's his strongest part of the film that he does, especially in relation of directing the actors. I think he does a great job of bringing out a lot of this emotional stuff that I was talking about out of Dwayne Johnson in the film. He really made it a showcase for him, and I think that he did a great job of making the film feel authentic to the time. When it is in the 90s, he has this grain on the film that feels like a 90s movie. When we switch over to the 2000s, it gets more HD. He does a lot of different things in the camera that really highlights what Dwayne Johnson is really good at, and being this larger than life character, but also the vulnerability that he shows in those quiet moments, because this is based off a documentary, he kind of shoots a lot of these scenes like a documentary style. We feel like a fly on the wall a lot of times watching certain aspects of this character's life as he achieves certain things or he breaks down because he doesn't, in a way where you usually wouldn't see it. It doesn't feel super Hollywood. It doesn't feel super dramatic. It feels stripped down. A lot of things that I thought he was going to do when he was going to throw this or break this or have anger tantrums, he really was trying to hold back a lot of his emotional breakdowns in the film, and the way Benny Safdie captured that was fantastic. So on a directing standpoint, he did a really great job. When it comes to editing, he did a really great job of putting the film together and making it flow where it didn't feel like a drag, or the energy kind of kept up, and the music selection helped with that as well. So directing, editing, Benny Safdie did a great job. Where the film falters, and I think where he failed his two main actors, is the writing. I entered the film not knowing much about Mark Kerr, and I left the film still not knowing that much about Mark Kerr. In terms of like just an enjoyable film and what we were given, I loved the film. I had such a good time watching this because of the aspects I talked about. Seeing Dwayne Johnson do something different, seeing Emily Blunt play this despicable character, the bromance, the fighting, all that stuff. But when you talk about top tier films of the year, films that are going to be Oscar worthy, something that's going to garner praise and be remembered throughout the year or even outside this year, I think the writing is subpar. And I think that why that is because we don't get the why. For a film to be praised really highly, or for like the film bros to really understand why something should be made, we need the why. Why does Mark Kerr want to be the fighter? Why does Mark Kerr stick with Emily Blunt's character Dawn even though she's clearly toxic? Why is Mark Kerr such a gentle person outside the ring and such a vicious person inside the ring? And why is Mark Kerr such a important figure? What was about him that made him such a revolutionary figure? We're told that, but we're not shown that. It doesn't explore it. It's very, very surface level, and I think that hurts it. There's a lot of moments that happen in this film, especially between Emily Blunt and Dwayne John's character, that's heated but kind of feels repetitive after a while because we don't get to explore it. Emily Blunt character Dawn kind of not jumps the shark fully, but goes to an emotional place that we don't have a lot of backing throughout the film to show why she would even go there. And I think that was really ultimately hurts the film's Oscar chances. I don't think that any of this movie is going to get nominated for an Oscar, unfortunately, even though it feels like it's that kind of vehicle. Outside of Oscars, when you think about just general enjoyment, I had a great time with the film. I just wish that a lot of the different aspects of the film, him potentially going against his best friend to win life-changing money, him and his relationship with Dawn and Mark Kerr's relationship, that contentious relationship, and just him trying to be the best and struggling with drugs. I wish all those things were given enough time and kind of tied into each other a little bit more, so that the film feel fulfilled like a whole meal. With that said, I still had a great time watching the film. I felt emotional in certain parts. I was excited during the fighting, and I really, really liked seeing the journey of Mark Kerr's career through 1997 up until 2000 when he finally started slowing down. And I really enjoyed all the dynamics and everything that they set out to do. I just wish it had a little bit better writing to make this one of the top tier best films and match some of the best fighting films that we've had when it comes to biopics. So with that said, I'm going to give The Smashing Machine a B. The question today is, what is your favorite Dwayne Johnson performance? Drop your comments down below and let me know. And if you enjoyed this review, you can check out my review about another movie that's based on a true story that really delves deep into what was going on, called The Lost Bus, based on the 2018 California fires. So check out that review right now.